Bonjour, and welcome to the Jared Show Knowledge Podcast. In this episode, I'm getting into video games. Well, I'm not actually getting into a video game. Wait, maybe this is all just a...
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls,
The Jared Show.
want to change the world.
Thanks for listening to the Jared Show Knowledge Podcast. Just a quick announcement. I started another podcast called Wisdom. It's called the Jared Show Wisdom Podcast, and it premieres Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The first episode is about the difference between knowledge and wisdom and why I created a whole another podcast. Go check it out. There's a link in the description. As for this episode, I'm going to be dropping some mind-blowing stats on you. I'll dip into my own experience with video game realm. And because of the crazy stats I found, I want to get into something I call a thought experiment. So stay tuned. I'll be back. Super Mario. Bro, have you heard about that guy? Bro, you gotta hear this dude. He's funny, but bro, he's got you thinking too. Bro, I was looking for something to listen to while I was going to work with my girl. She turns this guy on and I'm like, bro, why you gotta turn this guy on? And she says, just listen. So as I did, right? And this fucking guy was funny. But bro, he was thoughtful. Bro, I'm listening. Bro, you should be listening too. Alright, welcome back to the Jared Show Knowledge Podcast. Let me drop some stats on you. Are you ready for these numbers? Okay, try to comprehend these. They're kind of big, kind of staggering. Alright, so 2.5 billion. That's billion with a B. Let that number sink in for a minute. Or a second. 2.5 billion. That's how many gamers there are around the world. That's a third of the population of the entire world. Okay, now a gamer is somebody that is, much like in sports, they're a fanatic, right? It means that they want to play games a lot. I used to be a gamer. I never really liked the term. I think the term has kind of taken over. People are kind of embracing it, much like they did with fanatic into fan. I think it's somewhat the same. But that is a staggering number. That means 1/3 of the entire population of the world is playing video games, and they're gamers. Now, I'm specifically here talking about video games here. I'm not talking about stuff like chess. I play chess every day. Now, granted, I do it on my phone, but I don't necessarily consider that a video game. I think there's a lot of people that play, Go, the game Go. There's a lot of people that play a lot of different types of games. There's a lot of people that play a lot of different types of games. But I think what we're focusing on here more is video games, right? Like Madden, NBA 2K, that kind of stuff. PS3 and all the different gaming consoles and computer games and all these kind of things. So we'll keep going with some mind-blowing stats. Just remember, though, 1/3 of the population of the world plays video games. Insane. Okay, let's bring it a little bit closer to home, to the United States, okay? So 65% of American adults claim to play video games on a daily basis. That's 3 out of every 5 people, or roughly 215 million Americans, play video games every day. Here's another one. So most people, I think a lot of the older people, probably anybody over the age of, let's say, 40, 50, 60, that kind of older, would say that the average gamer, right, is somebody that's, 18, that kind of thing, maybe 15, 16. Here's a mind-blowing stat. The average gamer is actually 34, owns a house, and has kids. Here's another one for you. 72% of gamers are 18 or older. Most of them are male, but only by a 55-45 split. Rolling along with our statistics, men are 3 times more likely to purchase a game than a woman, mostly because women tend to play games more on their phone. And any like Candy Crush and stuff like that. Here's the kicker. Here's the thing. Here's the stat that I thought was interesting. People with a yearly income higher than $90,000 are less likely to buy games. I think probably because they're too busy. The stat that brought it home for me, you could call me a recovering gamer or, recovering addict of video games, whatever you want to call it. I'll get into that in a minute. But the stat that brought it home for me was 64% of U.S. households own a device that they use to play video games on. And for me, yeah, I'm guilty as charged. I still have a PS3. Something that might surprise you, though, is I haven't even used it. I mean, I haven't even turned it on. And I mean really used it like a heroin addict would talk about using heroin, because I was pretty much straight up addicted there for a little while. But yeah, I haven't even turned it on. I haven't even used it in 3 years. Not once in 3 years. And, I'll get into why I stopped here in a minute, but I want to run back over these stats. So basically the average gamer is 34 years old, owns a house, has kids, makes less than $90,000 a year, plays video games every single day, and is male, basically, because that's a 55-45 split, and is part of 1/3 of the population. I mean, to me, that's mind-blowing. I don't know about you, but when I read these stats, I'll have a link in the description as to where I got all these stats in the article I got them from. I had a sneaking suspicion that it was this crazy, but I went hunting for it and I found it, and it really is staggering to me. I think it's interesting. Here right after we get back from the break, we're gonna get into my story and kind of where I stopped. I don't look at video games as absolutely horrible. I think it's something that we could do better with. And we're going to get into that here in just a second. Yeehaw, y'all. This here Sweet Tea Tucker coming into your earballs again, trying to let you know that I know that you know that I know that you're on that there FaceTube just like everybody else. And when you get on that there tube of you should go check out my buddy Jared. I don't know what it is, but I like this feller. I think it's the stuff he talks about. Anywho, go check him out on the YouTube. Links in the description. Thank you kindly. And welcome back to the Jared Show Knowledge Podcast. Glad to have you. Glad you're listening. So my story of video games, my experience with things is I play video games. I played video games when I was really young. I mean, I was playing like Nintendo 64. I was playing like the original actual Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and Game Boy when it didn't have color and all these kind of things. I know I'm probably showing my age a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I grew up with video games. We grew up with all the different iterations of video games, all the way up. I stopped getting video games at a PS3, and I'll explain later on kind of where I'm headed with consoles in general. But yeah, to me, video games and smoking weed kind of went hand in hand. Not when I was a really young kid, but by the time I came of age, by the time I was a teenager, so I smoked a lot of weed, and I played a lot of video games. Some of my favorites were Madden, NBA 2K. Actually, Used to play NBA Live. If you've never seen that, go check that out. That was a lot of fun when it first came out. The NBA 2K and NBA Live really battled to see who was going to be king of the NBA video games, and 2K definitely won out. But yeah, I got all into the whole deal, with good reason though. I'll explain that in just a second. But yeah, I mean, I used to, we'd go to house parties and have Madden battles and tournaments and NBA 2K battles, and we used to, play boxing games and have those kind of battles and stuff like that. And it was a lot of fun back then, but I think now it's gotten, with it being online, which was a new development for me. I mean, I can't remember what Madden it was, but I ended up playing a Madden game for the first time online, and that was a whole different experience. But it used to be a lot more sociable. I mean, you used to go to a friend's house and hang out and play. You had to actually be there to play the video game. Now it's a whole different realm of things. But and I had a reason. We had reasons. Okay, for me, I had a great reason, which is I grew up in the northeastern part of the United States, and it was really cold and really snowy about 6 months out of the year, mostly. And yeah, I mean, I played basketball in the winter, but there came a point where basketball season ended. It was still cold outside, and you can only make so many snow forts and snow angels and have snowball fights and go snowboarding and all these kind of. I even used to have this thing called a snow skate. If you've never seen it, you should go check it out. It's really fun. But you can only do that so many times, and there comes a point where you succumb. But I would get bored of video games, really want to play basketball, and I would be out in the snow shooting basketball with 2-3 feet of snow on the ground, playing basketball anyway. And I just couldn't help myself. But yeah, I mean, I played video games. We all did. I mean, if you wanted to play basketball, I didn't have access to a gym at the time. I wish I had. If I had, maybe I would have been Michael Jordan. I highly doubt it, but it would have been nice to have access to an open gym, the keys to a gym. I would have loved that when I was a kid, but I didn't have that, so the next best thing was these video games that were coming out, the PlayStation 64 and all these kind of, NBA Jam back in the day. He's heating up, that was so much fun. We had a lot of fun with it. And it was a great way to escape. It was a great way to do all kinds of different things. Donkey Kong and all these things. As I grew up, I got more into other things. I played basketball. I moved from eastern United States to the southeastern United States. Grew up a little bit more. Eventually, I ended up moving out to California. When I did, I had already quit playing video games every day and quit smoking weed. And I started kind of waking up a little bit in life and wanting to do more. And because of that, I ended up packing everything I owned up in I think it was a Toyota Camry, including a surfboard, and had about $1,400 to my name, and I went for it and made it out to California and lived there for a number of years. What was interesting is I had stopped smoking weed when I went out to California, which is crazy. I felt so stupid that I didn't smoke weed anymore, and I was out in California with a surfboard. Talk about going against stereotype. But I was out there, and by the time weed became legalized, I think it was 2016, or 15. I ended up getting my green card, so I could go buy whatever I wanted. I could walk into a dispensary, they call them dispensary, and buy the most amazing kinds of weed you've ever seen in your life. And I ended up smoking again. I ended up getting right back into playing video games, bought another PS3, and got right back all into it. This time it just wasn't the same. And I'll tell you what happened is I was playing GTA 5 one day, and I had a wake-up call. I was sitting there. If you've ever played GTA 5 or any kind of other video game where you have an avatar, you have a character you have to dress, and they have their own house, and they have their own car, and they have their own weapons and all kinds of stuff. You know what I'm talking about. I was sitting at the home place, okay? So where you're looking at your character and you're about to dress your avatar up and different things. And I was sitting there and I was about to make a sandwich. And what I would do is I would find a good song I liked on GTA 5. I can't remember any of them now, but I'd find a good song and I would have the character up and I would sit there while I was eating, dinner or whatever, high as a kite, and pick an outfit or whatever to put on the character. And so I'd pause the game. The character was up, and I was looking through some stuff, and I went in the kitchen. I started making a sandwich. I made the most plain sandwich in the world, even though I have been a professional chef in my life. Made the most plain sandwich in the world, basically just to eat something because I knew I had to. Didn't really want to because I knew it'd kind of bring my buzz down, but I planned on smoking a lot after that anyway. So made my little sandwich of meat, cheese, and bread, pretty much. I don't even think I put mayo on it. Nothing. And sat down, and I was, I think, rifling through the clothes or whatever I was going to put on my character, and it dawned on me. I mean, it hit me right upside the face of what am I doing? I raced around this game trying to get the best house and save the best house. So every time I spawned somewhere, it was the best neighborhood and with all the best cars. I had saved a bunch of cars in the garage and had all kinds of amazing weapons and all kinds of crazy clothes, cool accessories and all this stuff. And it dawned on me, I am wasting my time making this character's life better and not my own. Here I am sitting in my own living room by myself, with nothing. No friends, no anything. What am I doing? I mean, it was ridiculous. And I stopped playing. I think I shut it off that night. I stopped playing. I did continue to play sports games because you could play online. I was playing NBA 2K something, I don't even remember. And I played that for a little while because I was still smoking weed. I finally, I got to the point where I just couldn't do it anymore. I reckon I'd kind of woken up, and the genie was kind of out of the box. The salt had lost its savor, and I just needed more. I wanted to actually go play basketball. I wanted to actually have those things in life. Now, what happened next was a really difficult time in my life. It wasn't because I was suffering from withdrawal of video games. It was because instead of smoking weed and playing video games and ignoring my problems, I decided to face them. And I knew I needed help, and I turned to the thing that I'd shoved aside for so long, which was the truth. The truth of why we're here and what's going on around us and these kind of things. I began to humble myself and allow God, with all his morality, virtue, and love, to be in my life again, and I haven't regretted it one bit since. The first change I made was I stopped playing video games, and smoking weed came a little bit after. I actually stopped smoking weed. The last day I smoked weed was April 20th, 4/20, 2017. And when I stopped playing video games, I had so much more to do. I had so much more free time all of a sudden. And I could do all kinds of things like painting pictures and reading and writing and photography and creating movies and all kinds of stuff. And eventually I stopped smoking weed too, like I said, in April. And my life took on a whole new meaning. And I set out towards the East Coast again. This time I had become a missionary, and I ended up going all over the place, handing out gospel tracts and doing all these things. I actually ended up volunteering with Samaritan's Purse to help clean up after the aftermath of Hurricane Harvey in Texas. I was down in Rockport, Texas, where the whole brunt of the storm had hit. It hit there and I think moved up towards Houston. I was right in between Galveston and Houston, I think. And it was a great experience. And, I never would have had that experience if I was still sitting on that couch, high as a kite, playing Grand Theft Auto. I can tell you that. Maybe. I just don't think so. And using that perspective, what would my life be like if I was still playing video games and smoking weed, I guess? I think about what other people's lives would be like if they were stuck in that rut. And right after this, we're going to get into that. And like I said, it's called a thought experiment. We're going to get into that. What would that be like? Hey there, just a quick message to say thank you for listening. And if you like what you've heard so far, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. New episodes every Sunday and Tuesday at 10 p.m. And don't forget about the new podcast show, The Jared Show Wisdom Podcast, premiering Monday also at 10 p.m. Welcome back to the Jared Show Knowledge Podcast. Let's get into what I call a thought experiment. So a thought experiment is basically this. I used to do these a lot when I was stuck in my situation. I didn't have a whole lot of money. I couldn't go on adventures. I couldn't learn from my surroundings and that kind of thing. So I did these things called thought experiments. And basically a thought experiment kind of goes like this. So let's say there's two people, and one person is a doer, the other person is a thinker. So one person, and they're both trying to figure out what happens if you stick your hand in a fire. So if I stick my hand in a fire, it's going to get burned, right? So the doer, he doesn't think about anything. He just sticks his hand in the fire, let's say over a burner or something, and burns his hand, right? Now the thinker, with his thought experiments, with his ideas, he's trying to figure out the nature, the understanding of what the flame is, what the fire is, in order to understand what happens when you stick your hand in a fire. So the thing is the doer will stick their hand over a fire and they'll get burned. And they'll say, oh, I don't want to do that. But they'll have no idea why. The thinker is the one that's going to recognize, first of all, what fire is and what is going to happen when you stick your hand in that fire, and understand why without ever having to do that. Now that is much of a thought experiment. And if you go on these thought experiments, you take this journey that really is capable of kind of changing your perspective on things, changing your perception even. That's one. Perception and perspective is a wisdom podcast thing. I think that's probably going to be episode 2, but you should go check that out. But yeah, thought experiments can get you pretty far. They can only get you so far. I mean, you can't learn everything from just thinking about it, but it does get you a little prepared for things. Now, with that in mind, we're going to get into kind of a what-if situation here. All right? So let's jump into this. What if Michael Jordan, okay, greatest basketball player of all time, what if Michael Jordan had played 30 to 40 hours of NBA 2K a week instead of working on his jump shot? Now let's think about it this way. So there's 7 days a week. Let's say play 5 hours a night. That's what, 35 hours a week that you're playing a video game, right? So what if Michael Jordan had played 35 hours or 40 hours a week of NBA 2K or a video game instead of practicing his jump shot? Do you think he would still be the greatest basketball player of all time? Let's go to another one. Let's go to Jimi Hendrix. So what if Jimi Hendrix spent all his time playing Guitar Hero instead of practicing to be the best guitar player that ever lived? Because I think he is. What would that be like? Right? Here's the way that I look at it, okay? And I've gone through all of these things, and I don't look back and regret. I look at it going forward, right? But I do look at it through the lens of the past. So I look at it all the time I spent playing video games as a kid. What if I had played guitar instead? What if I had put all my time and effort into learning how to paint or write or something? Anything besides video games? How good would I be at playing guitar? Could I have been the next Jimi Hendrix? Probably not, but humor me, will you? Maybe I could have been the next Leonardo da Vinci. Who knows? So having learned this now, I strive to put my efforts into something worthwhile. Something that when I finish, I can get a lasting sense of accomplishment rather than a fleeting glimpse of satisfaction. What I mean by that is that I can have something tangible. If I paint a painting, if I paint something on a canvas or a wall or whatever it is, I have something tangible for my efforts, right? A video game, not necessarily. And I'll get into that in just a second. But before that, let's think about it this way, okay? It's been said that it takes 10,000 hours to master something, all right? And I want to add a couple of things in here, not just video games, but if you play or watch TV or let's say mess around on your phone or, social media for 5 hours a day, okay, which I think is about average. I don't think a lot of people are doing, they say average is like 7 hours or whatever. I think that's a little bit dramatic. I think average is probably 4 to 5 hours. We'll say 5 hours, okay? So if you did 5 hours of these things that don't amount to tangible products after you get done, right? You haven't sewn anything. You haven't made anything. There's no tangible thing that you can grasp at the end of this 5 hours every day. There's no song that you're creating. There's no real creation there. You're just playing through a simulation kind of thing. If you did that for every day, for 5 hours a day for a year, that's 1,680 hours a year, okay? Now, like I said, we're trying to get to 10,000 hours to be able to master something. So that's just about, it's actually a little under 6 years in order to be able to master something. If you play guitar for, let's say, 4 to 5 hours a night, every night, which seems like a lot, but think about it. Right? I always think about it this way, right? So this podcast, we're going on, I think we're 26 minutes right now, okay? So to me, this might be going fast. To somebody else, it might be going slow. I've had conversations that were, 20 or 30 minutes, maybe an hour. And we're kind of, we're like, oh man, that took so long. But we're so willing, let's say even reading the Bible or reading a book or creating a song or learning the guitar or whatever. We think all these things take so long, working out, these kind of things. But we're so willing to binge watch television for, 8 hours. I will definitely admit to this confession time here, is I have been binge watched so many shows. I have sat through and watched all kinds of, I'm trying to change that little by little. These podcasts are a way of doing that as well, but and being productive, having something that's tangible at the end of it. It's interesting. You could be Jimi Hendrix in 6 years. 6 years seems like a long time when you're 16, but it sure ain't when you're 60. I can tell you, I'm not 60, but I can tell you right now, I'm not 16 either. But here's what I want to know, okay? When you are 60, when I am 60, are you going to look back and say, remember that day we were sitting around playing video games? What a crazy night that was. I remember it like it was yesterday. No, you're not going to do that. You know why? Probably because you're still going to be sitting on the same couch playing the same game. I'll end this thought experiment with this. Something I think we should all think about, okay? What if all the doers and thinkers, like Nikola Tesla, Leonardo da Vinci, Michael Jordan, Elon Musk, Jimi Hendrix, what if they all started getting sucked into video games instead of actually doing anything? What if the next Steph Curry or the next Ernest Hemingway were too caught up in video games to be bothered living in the actual world? With all this social media and all the things that we're doing, where are we headed with all these things? All right, let's bottom line it. Bottom line is, unplug the game and plug in the guitar. Or get an acoustic guitar. Go sit at the beach and play some guitar. Go sit in the mountains. Go sit in the woods. Play something. Stop figuring out how to level up in the game and figure out how to level up in life. Go live your life. Learn an instrument. Play a new sport. Go on an adventure in real life. Check this idea out, right? Here's the idea I had. This is why I really stopped. Go live your life while you have the energy to do so, right? And when you don't, when you're old and you're feeble and you can't make it happen anymore, come back to playing video games. Can you imagine how amazing video games are going to be in the next 5-10 years? Right? Go make amazing memories and stories and experiences, and who knows, you might even have a much better life because of it. Speaking of living out fantasies, in the next episode I'd like to dive into a nagging question. Where would you rather live, the beach or the mountains? I know my answer. Be thinking about it till the next episode. I tell you what, let me know your thoughts on today's episode. If you're listening to this, squawk at me on Twitter nice and loud. If you're watching my crazy face on YouTube, tell me about it in the comments. Thanks for listening, and as always, may God bless you. The Jared Show.